conversations with a stranger I barely know, swearing this will be the last. But
William James juxtaposed habits and a flywheel, going on to say that habits are the flywheel of society. And for those that are not mechanically inclined, like myself, a flywheel is a mechanical device that stores rotational energy. And the monotonous movement of the flywheel is what keeps whatever machinery running. Much like habits, which are activities that sustain necessary tasks. James would say that every action or thought is an extension of habit. Any action that we do, any new thought is either a new habit being formed or an old habit. William James would state that habit simplifies the movements required to achieve a given result, makes them more accurate, and diminishes fatigue. And this essentially is an adaptive function. When you continually complete a task or think the same thought over and over and over again, it becomes habit, something that you do automatically. And I think that we can all agree that there have been times when you are lost in thought and driving down the road and you're just so deep in thought that you make it home and you have no idea how you made it home. And I think that this is a good example of how habit can become automatic. An example in the book was Houdin, a stage magician who was the namesake of the famous Houdini. And essentially the book would state that Houdin would juggle balls, and he practiced for a very, very, very long time, and eventually he was able to juggle 3 balls at the same time and read and comprehend a book, which is no easy task, I could imagine. So a concept that was not touched on in our book but was mentioned in the video is James's beginning discussions on habit, and those were divided into 3 parts, and he did expand on these quite a bit, but the first being plasticity. And to take a quote from our video is, many of our neural connections are not programmed for one particular purpose. And to me, this means the exact opposite of instinct. Essentially, our brain has infinite ways of thinking and infinite ways to perform behaviors, and our brain also has the ability to modify and rewire itself and its connections, which is essentially responsible for habit. And routines are actions that are repeated and they become routine. So if you continually do the same thing, if you tie your right shoe first and then your left shoe, this will become routine, which leads to habituation, which is the result of routine. And going back to the previous slide where I mentioned when you're driving and you don't even realize that you made it all the way home without crashing, I think that this could be an example of habituation as well, stopping at a stoplight without realizing it, or just conforming to society and, performing daily tasks. Routines also enable us to multitask, which was something that was brought up in the video as well. And essentially, habits are responsible for every aspect of our life, because we would be a wreck if we forgot every single morning how to put on our clothes. Another concept by William James is the habit of learning, or proper habits. And I think that this one was really important to James because he was a teacher himself and an educator, and he believed that forming the proper habit of attention was way more important than rote learning. Rote learning is essentially repetition. An example is looking at a multiplication table and using flashcards to memorize your multiplication tables, but not truly understanding why 2 plus 2 equals 4. You know that 2 plus 2 is 4 because you've committed it to memory because of repetition, but you don't truly understand why, which would be the opposite of in-depth learning. And attention which was so important to James. And he would also mention that there are 3 stages of forming a new habit. The first being desire. You have to want to form this new habit. I'm going to use weight loss as an example. The first being the desire to lose weight. And not just being like, oh, I want to lose weight, but truly in your heart wanting to lose weight and to be healthy for yourself and your future. The second is information or knowledge. You have to educate yourself in order to form a new habit. So yes, you can want to lose weight all you want, but if you don't read a book on diet or hire a personal trainer or look up YouTube videos on exercises and dieting or just healthy habits and a healthy lifestyle, you're not going to have the tools that you need to successfully form a new habit. And lastly, this is repetition. Essentially, you cannot lose weight if you exercise for one day and you eat a salad one time. That's not going to aid in your ability to lose weight. Repetition is the only way you're going to form a new habit. So by going to the gym every single day and eating healthy foods every single day, then you will eventually see those results. Another concept by William James is his concept of bad habits. And aside from the habits that are truly just detrimental to our overall health and well-being, such as substance abuse and habits that just ignore our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, I think that this sort of bad habit is when you constantly live in monotony and we know that habits are essentially everything that we do every single day, and it becomes automatic, right? Over time, our habits become routine and habitual, and it just becomes second nature. And I think James meant that when you're constantly living in a state of autopilot, it limits your ability to take in your surroundings and have true and meaningful, in-depth thought. And habitual actions hinder new learning and restrict awareness. And I think that the term stop and smell the flowers is a good comparison to that. The book would say that they are by definition those forces that retard our development and limit our happiness. And I think that this is why James was so supportive of meditation, because meditation forces you to stop and to take in your own self, and it forces you to become aware of your own personal self and well-being and items and things around you in general, which is the opposite of these habitual actions that force us to be on autopilot.